Okay. All right. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Wyndham Raymond Board of Directors meeting. It is 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 18th, 2020. We are in Zoom video conferencing. Now, Mr. Howell.
Let's try this again. Kate Bricks.
Here.
Jenny Butler.
Here.
Jenny Cummings.
Here.
Marge Gavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler.
Here.
Anna Keeney.
Here.
Kate Levier.
Here.
Scott McLean.
Here.
Christina Small.
Here.
And Molly Cochran.
Here.
Okay, for the benefit of people who have not been here to see us do this, we found that it was easier to have one person do the pledge than all of us because we messed it up. So if you will put yourself on mute and Molly will lead us. Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Molly. Mr. Howell, are there any adjustments to the agenda? Whoops, you're on mute.
Yep. One adjustment to the agenda, which is in the first motion under appointments. And the first person's name listed as Kaylin Maroney. It's actually Caitlin Maroney. And other than that, there aren't any other adjustments.
Okay, great. It's now time for public input, which is the opportunity for anybody in the public to comment on items which are not on the agenda.
Hi, my name is Shane Robertson. I'm a parent new to the school district. This is the first time I've ever done this, so I don't really know how it goes, but I'm here just to address some concerns about some policies that were put into place due to COVID. This is, I want to be clear, a student issue. I'm not talking about an employee issue. And the concerns that I'm concerned with involve safety and performance, and basically and communication. And I'll start with communication. As new in the school district, I read all the material I was provided. I was basically made aware of two modes of education, the hybrid or the 100% distance, with the hybrid having two groups, A and B, and the hybrid would be 2 days a week. After my kids come home, we communicate about class and stuff. It was brought to my attention that there was kids in their class that were going 4 days a week. This was not due to special education. These are traditional students like my son and my daughter. I planned on speaking with the teacher and asking questions about it. I received a call about my daughter's performance level, and she wanted to know why her reading level was so low. And I said, well, it's because she's going 2 days a week. I work like most people. It's hard for me to be a teacher and work full time, managing clients, doing meetings when I have my kids here. I do my best, and my daughter's doing her best. So that being said, I called around the school, had to twist some arms, finally was told that there is a program for employees of the school district, teachers, to allow their kids to go to school 4 days out of the week. This means my daughter and son's class, 30% of their class goes 4 days out of the week. I do not know if the 30% are going to the same class or if it's split class. That negates all the reasoning for doing this to reduce exposure, according to everything I read on the CDC website. I also read through the fact sheet on COVID, put out by the district. If a child is assigned group A or B and designated time conflicts with childcare availability, can I request change in group assignments? The answer from the district or superintendent, at this time, we cannot accommodate the switching of assigned groups. We are working to transportation details, and we'll provide things in the future. My concern comes as this. My wife's in education. Would it be ethical for a teacher to give extra resources to a student in her class and refuse those resources to all the other students? And the only reason she's given those resources to that student is based on it's at a colleague's child. I don't believe that wouldn't be ethical in the business world. I couldn't show favoritism to my family. If I was in customer service, I can't show favoritism to a colleague over a customer at the counter. These are all simple questions. When I brought it to the light of the superintendent, it was basically made clear this is a workplace accommodation. And like I stated, and I just quoted it, we cannot accommodate. So why is accommodations being made for a group of parents based on their employment, but not on my children? And once again, I brought up the safety. That's the 30%. I mean, it's negating the whole purpose, according to everything I read on the CDC. As far as performance goes, everybody in the district received the testing scores. The test shows where you stand compared to the state average for each of your students. My kids were below the state average. The little bit of information that I was missing from those reportings as a data analyst was, where does the class stand as an average? After my wife requesting that information, we were given that information. Both my daughter's teacher and my son's teacher are not meeting the state standards on average in the class. So I don't know how to request all those students who are going 4 days a week, but I'd be curious to know where they, as an aggregate, compared to the state average. I was told there's no benefit to this. If environment isn't a benefit to education, then we don't need these fancy buildings, and I guess we can eliminate a lot of future budgets. We can have schools like prisons, because it wouldn't matter where the kid's at. That isn't conducive to learning, according to what the superintendent told me. They also receive free meals. Every student in the state of Maine is receiving free meals, according to what I read online, who goes to school. So those kids whose parents are teachers are receiving meals. Are all the other kids receiving meals? I don't know, that are at home. I know there's some programs, but not all parents do those programs. When I was a kid, my parents didn't do those programs. They also, according to the fact sheet, there's supervision. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of resources, including electricity, shelter, just being able to look at other people learning. I was told that they're not learning when they're there, they're repeating the same lesson. Well, when I was in school, a teacher came up to me and said 2 + 2 is 4, she's teaching me. She comes back to me, if I'm doing 2 + 2 is 4, if I hear that again in the background, that's reconditioning it. I'm being taught that again, regardless if it's direct or indirect. So that's my concerns, and the last concern isn't really to do with that. It's the time the teachers are spending on education. If we're going 2 days a week, my son shouldn't be earning a free time and then a movie the next class period. And then on Friday, when it's 1 hour for my son to be taught, she's going to take a 5-minute break at the end and leave early before her next meeting. That wouldn't happen in a traditional classroom. You couldn't just leave your classroom and leave those kids unattended. You're there for the allotted time. That allotted time was 1 hour for my kids from 9 to 10. My son got done at 9:55, and yeah, it's 5 minutes, but when you look, she's not meeting her standards. That shouldn't be happening.
Excuse me, Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, that's it though. Thank you.
Drifting into personnel issues, I think. But thank you very much for your input, and we will certainly be talking about it. And I can only tell you that this is, something that we take seriously. So I really appreciate your input.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody's time, and I wish you all the best, and have a great night.
Thank you. You as well. Okay. Could we have Ms. Garno, please, talking about student services and nursing updates?
All right. So Chris, I see that I have a lot of the nurses on this Zoom meeting, which I'm super excited. I know they've been putting in a lot of hours. I wonder if we could do nursing first and then special education second. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Mr. Howell, can you make me a co-host so I can share the presentation that they put together?
Already done.
Awesome. Let me hit share screen. whoops, hold on, you don't want to see that. Here's my nursing one.
Nice pictures, by the way.
I do this 100 times a day, and to do it when you know you're being recorded is a little different. All right, so I just lost all my nurses. Brittany, do you want to, I'm going to do a view and format view. Do you want to walk us through the slides, or one of the nurses, or do you want me to? And I'll
Be happy to.
Okay.
I don't mind. So we just put together a few pictures from each of our schools to show you guys what things are looking like. A lot of changes. We have lots of signage showing where to go. We have this is at the high school, and Carrie's isolation room is back there, and we keep it very minimal, nothing around it, it was just really a cot. And then on the door, you can see that that's all of our PPE that we can don before we go into the isolation room. And so we have it readily available.
Okay. Whoops. And then let me, hold on. There we go.
And then this is Raymond Elementary, and it's the same thing. Lots of signage. Everything it's just very different this year. At the elementary school, Courtney used to have a bench in her office. We've now changed it so we have separate seating, so it's 6 feet apart. So when students need to, when there needs to be more than one student in there, and again, she has the door hanging with all her essentials, and she's wearing her a set of goggles, which I don't think I took a picture of those at the end, but that's one of the types of goggles that you can be wearing for eye protection over your glasses, and always with a mask. And then we have the Manchester School. I believe, Matt, you took over what room did you have to take over?
I took over the band and orchestra room.
Okay, so some of us were able to use our own office spaces if they're big enough, but if they're not, we had to take over a different area in the school for an isolation space. And so we got dividers. So because it's probably a bigger space than we would need even, so that the student is truly isolated, unfortunately, within the space. And then he reconfigured his office a little bit, and that's outside of the band and orchestra room, or all his supplies. And here at the middle school, this is Gail, and she's at her desk with her mask on, and she's got her isolation space back there, or just a simple cot that something that we can easily wash after every student. And we have the primary school. We have Deb's isolation space. She has a nice card out front of hers. And I think it's important to note here that she is actually working with a student as well. And because chronic conditions this is shared with the permission of the parent, but chronic conditions aren't going away with this. So we still have to find a way to treat these students. And so there is Deb with all of her PPE on as she's handling a student's chronic condition. This is my office at Jordan Small. I have 2 separate spaces. My regular office, which is where my name's on the door, and then the other space I've taken over one of the science labs. So I have windows in there that can be opened, and a cot, and outside of the room is all of my PPE as well. I think it's just wanted to show you guys. I don't know if you've seen all the signage that we had. Lots of wear a mask, sanitize, lots of reminders we have everywhere. And they're really nice signs that we have. They're all over the floors and the doors and bathrooms and by sinks. It's a good reminder. And then these are our types of PPE, or personal protective equipment. So we have a gown, different types of masks. I put a few. There's a KN95, there's just a cloth one, and there's an N95, which we at this point are all fitted for. We have a face shield, and then a pair of goggles because they're interchangeable, whatever suits the person, and then gloves. So these are things that we're wearing every day, basically, almost. And then we thought it was important just to show you the forms that we're using for the students if we have to send a student home. So we're giving the parents lots of information on why they fall under the criteria that they need to be sent home, and then the medical clearance that we need returned from their doctor in order for them to return to school.
Yeah, I think that's it, Brittany.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were gonna see if you guys had any questions.
I just have a comment. I'm extremely honored that we have you all working for us, because the work that you're doing is phenomenal in this time of COVID. So we really appreciate all the extra things that you have to do in every minute. You can't just accept a child with a bloody nose. You have to do all the PPE and everything. I'm very impressed. Thank you.
Right. And I think, Jenny, from my perspective, and I'm sure Chris and Christine feel the same way, this is my first time coming before the board this school year, and I would just like to publicly thank the nurses for all their work over the summer. So without the prep work and the meetings that they had endlessly with Chris and Christine and I bringing us up to speed, we would not have had such a successful opening. And so they gave up their time this summer to come and help us be ready. So I'm forever grateful for that as well.
Just add, because I think I've met with the nurses more this year than I've met my entire career. And I just want to say, first of all, appreciate the hard work, and they are doing some hard work because, we're all familiar with now with COVID cases, the couple that we've had in the district, but what you're not aware of is all possible ones and all the different kids that they're tracking down and families that they're working with and consistently tracking to see whether or not that might be a case or may not be a case. And so it has added an entirely different dimension. Also just want to thank Carrie for last Wednesday on a vacation day, working with Ryan and with me and the Maine CDC for a case that was notified to us, just for taking time. And our nurses are on all the time right now. And lastly, I'll just say is we have a very high functioning group of nurses that are very thoughtful. And as they approach situations, they really are student focused, and they are the most calm group of individuals and problem solving that I work with in the district. So I just really appreciate all that they've done.
Mrs. Bricks had her hand raised.
Thank you to all the nurses. You are in the trenches more than anyone, I think, and I really appreciate your in-depth work. I also thank you for the form. That's very helpful, I think, for parents, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into that. And my question is, I'm wondering, aside from the laborious use of PPE all day long, what is most challenging for you right now in your role? Because, we really rely on you. The whole community relies on you. So what would you say is the biggest challenge?
I'll speak to that. For me, the biggest challenge right now is kind of feeling like the COVID police, and I don't want to complain. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, because it's part of the job, but we do a lot of reinforcement with families, and we have to track a lot of people down and ask a lot of questions. And I know we all work really hard to form relationships with our families, and depending on how people feel about what's going on right now, they have a different idea of how necessary certain things are. So kind of having to take that stand day after day after day and feel like we're pushing buttons has been my biggest challenge, I think. But this too shall pass, I think. We'll be on the other side.
Thank you.
I can speak to that a little bit. I just think my biggest challenge at the high school is just keeping up with the numbers of kids that are out sick and when they can come back, and if I've had their test results and who I'm waiting for, and that constant on the phone nonstop. And we're missing the big piece of like seeing the students, and that's like what we all love about school nursing, is being with our kids. And we're seeing less kids, which is good because we don't want healthy kids coming down to our office, and we want sick kids to stay home. But that's definitely a piece that we're missing. So it feels like I would agree with Courtney, like kind of that struggle with families, like we're pestering them for information and just trying for them to understand like what they want their kid to go to school with someone that was sick, so we're trying to just get them to understand where we're coming from, and know that there's a lot going on in the community right now. So we're really trying to do the best so that we can keep schools open, because the kids are really seem so happy to be there, even just the 2 days a week. I think that's really important for them. And without the community and the parents doing the right thing, that might not continue. So just that constant message.
Thank you.
The other thing that I would add, Kate, before I let the nurses go, is I also want to thank all the school board members and the community, because over the last couple of years, you guys have allowed us to continue to build our nursing staff so that we have nurses in every school building. And I'm grateful for that. I know our nursing team is grateful for that. I have colleagues who aren't as fortunate. And if we had half the nursing staff and had to try to cover multiple school buildings and address COVID at the same time, it would nearly be impossible. So I thank you all for your support in allowing us to have such an expanded nursing team.
Thank you all. We really appreciate it. Again, the sacrifice you give. Marge? Oh, she's clapping. Sorry.
All right.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. So to my awesome nursing team, you can stay on if you like, or you can now call it a day if you like. I'm going to switch gears and talk about special ed.
Thank you.
All right. So let's do, oh, that's all you guys. Hold on. Got to get my special ed one up here. There we go. All right. So I'm going to lose my ability to see a lot of you. So Chris, if you could just monitor if folks have questions, I will be able to address those. So when I was talking with Chris and Christine about coming tonight and really trying to give the board an update on where we are with special education services and their delivery, I thought it would be helpful if we actually stepped back for a minute and just gave everyone that's present in the meeting and anyone who might be watching just some background information. And I know those are a lot of words to read, but I shared with Chris that feel free to share this presentation. But really the most important thing is that IDEA, which is the law that oversees the delivery of special education services, we've never in the history, and today is actually the 45th anniversary of the IDEA going into law, there's never been a time when we've had conditions such as the COVID-19 pandemic that literally impacted delivery of special education services simultaneously across the United States. So this is an unheard of situation. And then back from March to June, when we sort of overnight found ourselves in a school closure, there was just sort of these informal partnerships between school districts and the Maine Department of Education, Maine Parent Federation, Disability Rights Maine, Drummond Woodsum, a variety of stakeholders. And we all just agreed to work collaboratively as we tried to navigate the delivery of special ed services in a full remote environment with no opportunity to plan and no guardrails or boundaries for what we were supposed to do. So we survived. We were able to get through March and June, and we actually did a pretty robust ESY program as best we could, again, remotely. But as the 2021 school year started, there were significant changes regarding the expectations for the delivery of special ed services compared to that March and June break. So while all of our students received special education services during March and June, it was at a reduced rate compared to what's written on their IEP. All of that changed as the school year started. And so everything that we knew in terms of special education law, Chapter 101 is what oversees Maine, were back in play. And so everything had to be the same as if we were open for 5 days in person under normal pre-COVID conditions. The timelines for IEP meetings, all special ed paperwork, any evaluation, referrals for eligibility, whether they were from parents or staff, all came back into play with the start of the 2021 school year. And for us in special education, Fridays have been considered student days since day one. And so that was really an opportunity for us to look at delivery of services in a 5-day model, knowing that some students were in person and some students were remote. So I think the big shift for us in the special education department was the guidance we actually received a couple weeks before school started, and it might even have been the week before school started, that IEPs, as they were previously written, were really no longer valid in the sense that we needed to make sure that our service grid especially reflected the model that the school was opening under. So because RSU 14 opened in a hybrid model, that involved a combination of both in-person and remote learning for the majority of our students. So what we needed to look at was the total number of minutes for that specially designed instruction and related service had to be written as it, or had to be provided as written on a pre-COVID IEP, even though we opened in the school hybrid model. So we were having to figure out how were we going to deliver those total number of minutes and services given this split sort of environment. And so we had to make those decisions, you know, sort of as IEP teams with exceptions made on a student by student basis. So how did this really impact it? What it did was to change in that, in sort of how we do school, created a need for us to capture the delivery of those special ed services given a variety of models. So previously, we would have written IEPs, for those of you that are familiar with them, on a usually typically using a predetermined number of sessions, either week by week or weekly, sometimes monthly. But for example, if a student received reading instruction, we would have typically written a service, you know, 5 days a week times 30 minutes for a total of 150 minutes. The location typically would have been recorded usually as special education or regular ed if we were doing a push-in. And even if that specially designed therapies occur remotely. So now we have to account for the same amount and level of service, taking into consideration whether it is happening in person or remotely. So the guidance, the additional guidance we received from DOE, and there were lots of Zoom meetings, sometimes 3 times a week. Maine Parent Federation was involved, Drummond and Wisdom was involved, the Disability Rights Maine was involved. But in the end, the DOE recommended the introduction of an individual remote learning plan and as an accommodation to the IEP. So I spent lots of time with our staff in August doing some PD around what that meant. Having them feel comfortable talking with parents about what that meant. And so those IRLPs were created for each student. And in order to do that, we had to amend the IEP. So all those changes required a written notice, an amended IEP, and a creation of an actual document called the Individual Remote Learning Plan.
Yeah.
So here's an example for those of you that are familiar. This, all I did was, this is like one page off of a individual learning plan. In addition to this grid, the learning plan also provides really the contact information. So who are the members on the team? How are we going to communicate with each other? You know, email or phone, those sort of things. But this is really the focus of how it impacted us. And so I just use this example. So this student normally would have received 200 minutes a week of specially designed instruction. And in the past, that might have been 5 times a week for 40 minutes. So we had to change it so that it read 200 minutes a week. And then through the IEP team or discussion, the team agreed that 120 minutes would be able to be provided in person. So this student is a hybrid coming 2 days a week. So twice the 2 days they're here, they get 60 minutes a week in person. And then on their remote days, we're also providing 80 minutes. So typically on those off hybrid days, or they're like if it's an A cohort student on a B day, we would provide 40 minutes of reading instruction in a remote environment. Right, and then you can see that applies to related services. So in person, this student would have had 90 minutes a week of speech. So on their speech days, they get 30 minutes a week, and then we have to pick up one more session on a hybrid day or a remote day for 30 minutes. The remote column is really intended for those longer periods of time if we should have to go to red. So if for some reason the state would go to red, we have to be cognizant of the amount of time students are on their screen and what's realistic given a combination of regular ed and special ed services. So in this hypothetical example, the team agreed that they would reduce the amount of direct instruction to 100 minutes a week and 60 minutes a week of speech. So again, just an example, but we did this for every student that is attending Wyndham Raymond. So the DOE explained it, and that's how we've used it as well, that these IRLPs, as we refer to them, are really intended to serve as a pivot plan in case we go to remote. And it could be, as we learned at the high school, it could be just a couple of classes that go to remote. It could be a whole grade that goes to remote. There's any combination that this could be used. So it could be intended for a short period of time, but it also could be intended for a longer period of time like we experienced in March. Having the flexibility in how we deliver the services, whether it's a combination of in-person or remote, allows us to have the flexibility to change those settings without having to have an IEP meeting each time, which is why we actually did the minute services on the IEP and then supplemented with the IRLP to be able to delineate where the service is happening. We are just about finished. Our goal is to have all of the remote learning plans finished before Thanksgiving break, and then we have one school that's a little bit behind, and so we'll be finishing mid-December for that school. But using the October 1 count as an example, we have 517 students currently receiving special ed services, which meant 517 written notices, 517 amended IEPs, and 517 IRLPs, which the site coordinators have done the bulk of that work, but special ed teachers, related service providers, as you can see, just to open the year, that is an exorbitant amount of paperwork and meetings and phone calls and things that have had to occur on top of all of the planning for 5 days a week. So my staff has been busy, but I wanted to just share with you, for some of you who are new on the board or maybe watching, I just pulled off the October 1 count information and compared it to last year. As you can see, we have a variety of disabilities that we serve, and we have a little bit of a reduction in numbers. And so again, this was a snapshot on October 1st. Since that time, our numbers have already increased by 12, I think. So we're edging back up to where we were. There was a combination of families who chose homeschool to start the school and realized that probably wasn't the option that they looked for. And so now they're back. And then we had a lot of new students actually moving into our district, and many from out of state. So our numbers are creeping back up. If we did a November 1 count or a December 1 count, I think we would be surpassing our 539 number pretty quickly. And then you can just see the breakdown of enrollment per school on what's on my right-hand side of the screen for the actual building enrollments compared to last year. So really, when Chris and I started talking about what is this going to look like for learning options, really we have the two possibilities for the most part. We have a hybrid, which is the combination of in-person and remote. And that is what we consider the district's offer of FAPE. And so that FAPE is, for those of you not in special ed, is a free and appropriate public education. And that's the model that RSU 14 is working under. So for our A cohort students, they receive in-person instruction on Mondays and Wednesdays, with remote instruction and related services provided Tuesday, Thursdays, and Friday. The amount of services is dependent on the individual student's plan. One of the things that we did try to do as much as possible is, we know our folks, our littles especially, want to, and well, really all students want to be with their peers on their in-person days. So we really tried to minimize the amount of time we were pulling them out, being cognizant of, we know that face-to-face special ed instruction is really the best. So it was really trying to find a balance between the two. So which is why we also have to do some of the services on their remote days. Cohort B is just the opposite of cohort A. So they get their in-person instruction on Tuesdays, Thursdays, with their remote services provided on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then we had the last group, which is, you've heard a lot about, of our four-day group. One of the things that we looked at was for some of our most neediest students across the district, we know that March to April of last year was particularly challenging. And the majority of these students are students who have trouble accessing technology, who may have communication devices or sign language or something other than just using their voice to communicate. They have a combination of academic instruction, functional instruction, and a ton of related services. So we looked at the students who were with their regular education peers less than 40% of their day, or in other words, were in the special ed setting 60% or more of the day, and gave priority to that population. And then looking, the second caveat was, could we fit them in using CDC guidance around how close students could be and distancing and all that. And so now, as of, this was actually as of yesterday, because we've had some changes, this is the current C group. So at primary school, we have 11, Manchester, we have 13, Wyndham Middle 4, Wyndham High School 12, RES 6, and none at Jordan Small. So right now we have a total of 46 out of 52 that could possibly access the 4-day. And that represents 8% of our special ed students and a little over 1% of our total population, which aligns with the group that typically will do the alternate assessment. So this is the population that we were targeting, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback that families and teachers are really happy that this group, that we were able to pull this off, because it's really been beneficial for students. The last group that we have is those families that chose full remote. So for those students that have IEPs, we still have to provide special education related services, even though their families chose the full remote option. So this is how the breakdown is as of yesterday. And again, the numbers, if you were to add these columns up, don't exactly agree with the October 1 count. And I know that partly because we've had new students move in, partly because we have students who attend special purpose private schools. And then we have other students who live in Raymond who have Raymond School Choice, who will add into our count, but into our October 1 count, but they're not included in these numbers because they're attending school in other districts. So as you can see, we have the majority of students in the hybrid, with our 46 students in C, and then another 70 or 80 or so in the right-hand column of fully remote students. And so really, in order to deliver all of that, it takes a village. And so I just listed all the different positions of within the special ed department, and every single person has gone above and beyond to help us pull off what for me is nothing less than a Herculean feat. And so you've probably heard and been updated that we've been short-staffed pretty much all year long. We continue to be short-staffed, so the staff that we do have has really just never complained and done everything that we have asked them to do, and just continue to work so hard, you know, above and beyond. So since I had this platform, they know that I'm grateful, but I just wanted to publicly recognize all of the special education staff across the district in both Wyndham and Raymond, because they have been extremely flexible. They've been creative. They have been problem solvers when I didn't see a way through. Collaborative doesn't even begin to touch on how much they've worked together to pull this off. And in my opinion, they're heroic. And so for those of you that know me, you know that special ed is my passion. And so, you know, I always like to share I teach special ed, what's your superpower? So I'm really grateful for them. And then, you know, the last thing for me, so that my staff can hear, is that, you know, I am so grateful because they've always put, or through this whole time, continue to put student needs first. They have worked countless hours beyond what would normally be expected. And I mean, if you think an extra 10 hours a week might be expected, these guys are working 40 hours extra a week sometimes to just pull this off. And yet, despite all of that, they've faced each challenge or obstacle with an open mind and positive attitude. And so for that, I am grateful. So thank you for your time for listening. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then if you guys have questions for me, I am more than happy to try to answer any that I can. Margie?
Raising your hand.
Yeah, I was looking for my raise your hand button and for a second I couldn't find it. I'm sorry. Just a quick question. Back in the slides, and you don't have to bring them back up, but in the A and B group with
Yes.
the hybrid,
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious because I know how hybrid's working in the regular part of the school, and I know on their off days how that's supposed to work for those students. How, if your staff, and I know you're understaffed, if your staff is teaching kids, we'll take the A group, for instance, they do Monday and they do Wednesday, okay, and it says, okay, my question is, where do they get their help on Tuesday? Because that staff has another group of children with them.
So this is where we got really creative, Margie. So it's not uncommon for a special ed teacher to teach a group of reading students for 45 minutes and you're in person, and then I go into my classroom and I shut the door and I now have a remote group for 30 minutes, or I have one student for 20 minutes because their needs are different, and then I switch to another Zoom and I do 20 minutes of direct instruction to a student who's home, and then I open my door and I let the next group of littles that are in my building and I teach for 45 minutes and I do reading and writing. So we are extremely flexible that way. The other piece, how we've been able to pull this off, is we have ed techs that are amazing. And so they have been extremely flexible too. So we have ed techs that are teaching both in person and remote, complementing the teachers, especially resource room teachers that they're assigned to. I also have four special ed teachers who are primarily focusing on remote, but right now three of them actually are working part of their day in the building. So they come in to their what was their classroom. They might teach a half a day in their classroom and then they teach remote the other half a day, or they teach all day remote, but they're in our building because we've been short staffed, so they can help as we need them. So it's a finely orchestrated puzzle, and if you move the piece, I don't know what I'm going to do. so everybody knows where they're supposed to be.
Well, that is definitely the definition of flexibility. God bless them.
Yes, it really is.
That's a lot.
And if somebody's out sick, it's like, okay, here's the Google Classroom link. Who's going to grab this group, and we're going to teach it. And so just a lot of coordination. And I will also add that, I have site coordinators who are teaching reading in classes at the high school. I have special ed coaches who are teaching. Misty and I have picked up a ton of IEP meetings to try to help, just alleviate the burden as we try to navigate this. I think we were all thinking when school opened, this was going to be short term. And about mid-October, I think I got a sense from Mr. Howell that it might be a little longer term. So we've been really trying to find ways to keep the schedules so that people's physical and emotional health is sustainable. And I think that's probably our biggest challenge. We have had the pleasure this week. I did EdTech interviews again on Monday, and I was able to hire two people, and I'm hoping a third. So that's going to help alleviate a little of the burden, both at Wyndham Middle and at Manchester School. So again, we're also looking at we took advantage of some of the COVID funds, and so purchased some plexiglass to allow closer groupings of folks. So really rethinking the way that we started school to try to be more efficient now. So we're always looking at ways of improving.
Well, I have a very high regard for your staff because I know that the students that they work with are very unique. Each one is individual. They don't fall in any kind of a group, basically. So bravo to them is all I can say.
Yeah, well, I do appreciate it. And, you know, for us, I have to say too, having the opportunity to work with Christine Hessler and her distance learning team, essentially special ed with no formal training, learned how to do remote from March to June of last year. And then we've just had the opportunity to continue to improve our craft. And so I have special ed teachers who are delivering the Spire reading program, you know, corrective reading, all of those specialized programs that we were told never could be done remotely. They're not only doing it remotely, they're rocking it remotely. And so I'm really confident our kids are getting a lot of good instruction. So I'm really proud of them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
As a parent of a speech student, I just wanted to say thank you. Our IEP meeting was on time.
Okay.
You know, talk about flexible. You know, it was brought up like, hey, assessing a speech student wearing a mask is kind of challenging. So how about I come into the room when she's at lunch? And, you know, that way we can have a much better assessment. Being offered the remote learning plan was really comforting, you know, to think like, hey, it was like, we've thought of everything. We've got you covered. This is what we're doing this year under these circumstances. This is what we're going to do if something changes. I really appreciate it. I can't even begin to imagine everything that went into making all of this happen. But on my end of things, they were so like calm, cool, and collected. Like, look, it's all done. Here you go. You don't have to worry about this piece of it. And just thank you.
So Chrissy, you make my heart full. I really appreciate your comments because I know how hard we've worked, but it's really nice to hear the positive on the other side. So thank you.
Kate?
Well, first of all I can say is wow. When I was thinking about all of the pieces that you had to put in place over the summer, it kind of blew my mind a little bit. It seems absolutely enormous, so kudos to your staff. I mean, that seems so trite to say, actually, but I know everybody's working like a dog to make this all, as Christina say, seem so seamless and, I don't want to say easy, but in control. My question is, can you explain to me what happens on Fridays?
Sure. So for us on Fridays, you know, as Christina alluded to, we have the individual learning plans. And so we have a variety of things happening on Fridays. We have everything from direct instruction for reading, writing, and math. We have all the related service providers, speech, OT, PT, all delivering services on Fridays. We have our folks at the high school and some of our self-contained teachers who do behavioral support working on Fridays. And so really for us, I have staff who teach as small as 3 hours a day to some teachers who are teaching 6 hours a day on Fridays, depending upon the individual students on their caseloads and how much we're able to get done on the in-person days. And even some of our 4-day kids, they have so many services and we want to maximize some of their time in the regular ed setting that we actually provide services to those students as well on Fridays, even though it's remote. The other things that happen on Fridays for us have been IEP meetings, because as Christina kind of alluded to, normally we have a ton anyway, but this year just adding all the layers, especially for incoming Ks and different parents, that we wanted to actually have a meeting to talk about the the new normal, and the IRLPs, and not just a phone call and without a meeting. So some meeting, and then a lot of the consultation happens on Fridays, because to get ready for the next week, because we have kids in front of us and remote, all 4 days, well, 5 days actually.
Well, I just want to thank you for your leadership. I think
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate that.
it's enormous, and so I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
I also want to say that when I was in the classroom, when I was teaching, I always thought that I would never want to be a special ed teacher because of all the extra work that they had to do. Impossible to me. And that's in a normal time. I can't imagine the amount of extra demands on all of their times and your time. It's just astounding to me. So please convey also all of our thanks for your wonderful work and for their wonderful work.
I
Tell
will.
them
Thank you.
that we see what they're doing and we appreciate them. And
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on. Thanks again to appointments. Anna?
I move to approve the following appointments for the 2020-2021 school year. Caitlin Maroney, speech language pathologist at Manchester School with Masters on step 9. Salary of $55,890. It's prorated to $36,949.50. And Dakota Duplessis, special education teacher at Wyndham Middle School with a bachelor on no steps. Salary of $39,524, prorated to $27,226.68.
Second.
Been moved by Anna and seconded by Jenny. Is that right? Any public comment? Okay, you're mute.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank, since you just did those appointments, I think it would be really nice for the board to know, in the case of Dakota, I would really like to recognize Drew Patton and Tina Johnson and Melissa Bois. Through their thoughtfulness and guidance, we actually took advantage. So for those of you who don't know, Dakota was an EdTech 3 who's worked in our district for 3 years. We took advantage of the DOE's emergency certification plan because special education teachers and other teachers are so hard to find now. And so they really had a conversation with him about giving this a shot and continue to support him every day. And so this is a really nice example of one of our own ed techs who has taken a leap of faith and done this certification, and so is now part of the Wyndham Middle School special ed team, and we've gotten some really good feedback. So we'll continue to support him as he works towards his conditional certification, but this is an example of how this, I just have to also thank the state and their creativity, whether that's Pender or Macon or Aaron Frazier, but this allowed us to take a really good employee who wouldn't have normally had the certification and then train them under our model. So thank you to the Wyndham Middle School staff.
That's great, thanks. Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
Motion carries. Welcome to them. Now, could I have Marge make the motion about crisis plan?
I move to approve the RSU 14 crisis plan for 2020 through 2021.
Second.
It's been moved by Marge, seconded by Scott. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Now, lease purchase. Jenny?
I move to vote to authorize the superintendent to enter into the financing agreement for the lease purchase of technology equipment through Apple Inc. at $920,162.75, amortized over 4 years at an annual cost of $60,206.25, should that be in the best interest of the district pursuant to 20 AMRSA subsection 5401-15C in the format presented.
It's been seconded by
Second.
Scott. And any public comment? Mr. Howell, did you want to explain anything?
Yeah. For those of you who might be watching this at home, this is a duplicate of a vote that the board took a couple of weeks ago. And just to give a quick explanation, this is a purchase that the district is doing to replace some MacBook Airs that are out of warranty for 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, which will allow us to create a greater square pool and to move computers around the district should we need to go remote. When we did the initial lease with Apple, with our local Apple representatives, they allowed us to take what we were putting as a down payment of cash, which is through Corona relief funds, to pay for the hardware. And something that I shared at last meeting, we are not allowed through the federal funds that we receive to pay for the supporting software and that are required for these machines. And so we actually have to pay for them separately. And the initial lease that was given to us, it was a 0% lease for $240,824, which is the amount that we're financing. It did not include the cash down payment of $679,000 that the district was having. When Apple parent company wrote the final lease, it actually included the $679 as an initial down payment in the lease, and then the $240 over 4 years at 0%. So you are financing the exact amount. So the vote you're taking tonight is financing the exact same amount that you financed 2 weeks ago. And it also rescinds the vote that you took back on November 4th. And so it allows us to then purchase that technology.
Thank you. Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
Okay, Jenny, will you do the second part of that motion?
Yes. I move that the vote entitled "Vote to Authorize Lease Purchase of Technology," equipment in the principal amount of $920,162.75 be approved in the form presented to this meeting.
Second.
Been moved by Jenny, seconded by Kate. All those in favor?
Kate Bricks,
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Christina,
I'm sorry. Public comment?
sorry.
It's my fault. Any board discussion? All those in favor? Oh, Pete, did you have your hand raised?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. All those in favor? Goodness gracious, it's gremlins tonight.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now it's time for the curriculum committee report, and we'll hand it over to Christine Hessler.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me tonight to talk about our first curriculum committee meeting of the 2021 school year. As you remember, we had a similar presentation in May, and what we're going to share with you tonight, I want to review for yourselves and for the community the process that we went through in order to gather the information that we're going to share with all of you. So Chris, thank you for sharing your screen. And Chris, like Lisa, I'm not going to be able to see people. So if you could just interrupt me if somebody has a question, that would be really helpful. So let me just go here. So first of all, what I'd like to say is a huge thank you to Christine and Chris and Lisa as we have gathered all of this information. I think that you can tell by listening to Lisa tonight, there are so many moving parts right now in the district, pre-K to 12. I certainly couldn't be doing this without their support and their encouragement. And I think you're going to see some themes emerge through here tonight, which we are excited to share. And I also want to remind people that all of this feedback that we take goes into a planning process so that we can actually do something with the information. So I'm going to get started with my slides. And please stop me if you have any questions. So the first piece I wanted to share, oh, I just did this the other night. That's sorry. Let's go back here. Is we had two separate curriculum committee meetings. We had one on November 4th, which was our distance learning team. And we had one with our hybrid staff. And the goal of the sense of these meetings was to provide the RSU 14 school board with an update on distance and hybrid learning. So the outcomes of our meetings was to hear from educators, both distance and hybrid in the RSU, share some positive aspects and useful tools of both learning situations, identify some of the barriers, and then identify the tools and resources needed to enhance the distance learning platform and the hybrid learning platform. And so out of our 250 people staff, we asked, we had 5 people in person that attended our meeting to share their thoughts, and 11 staff responded in written form. And for our distance staff, 10 of our staff came in person to share their thoughts, and another 11 responded in written form. So when we asked these 4 questions, these maybe look a little familiar from the spring, but we found that really helped us glean some of the information we truly needed to continue to serve the staff and the students in RSU 14. So the first thing we wanted to know in each situation was what has gone well, what are the tools and resources that have been of assistance, what are some of the barriers you have faced, and then what are some of the tools or resources you would need in the future for either distance learning or hybrid learning. So we gathered all of this information. We took all of the written form, all the comments people made to these prompts live, and we came up with some big themes for each of these. So tonight I'm going to start with our hybrid presentation. And these are the staff members that are working in the hybrid model, which just as a reminder is that they have students 2 days in person, and then the students are working from home the other 2 days, and then there's a Friday component. And so these are the big major themes that I'm going to address as we go through the slides. The first one is the mental health of staff, the Friday expectation shifts or challenges. Another theme was collaboration and teamwork. A fourth was kind of all put together technology, resources, and planning, which included professional development and sharing. And then lastly, connections with families and students. And so the first one, and these are bullets that came through from our staff that they wanted us to all understand and to know. So under the umbrella of mental health of our staff, seeing students in person is a huge plus. Actually seeing our kids face to face after a very long spring and summer proved to be a really exciting component for our hybrid staff. They're happy to be back and working on safe routines with children and with each other. It does present some challenges, which we wanted to make sure that we mentioned, because again, a challenge for us is something we need to think about, and how is it that we can help with that challenge. And so some challenges are being a staff member and notified you have to quarantine and then shifting all your content overnight. We saw that happen at the high school. It's also difficult when working with our younger students that staying 6 feet apart is really difficult for our staff. It's really hard for them because they're so used to being closer to kiddos. And a few staff are not feeling safe in the buildings. And an example of that is, when our older students are, getting a little tired of the mask, they pull the mask down below their nose a little bit. And then, going to a big lunch area seems a little bit undaunting to staff because kids don't have their masks on. So there are some staff that are feeling a little unsafe at some times. And we wanted to make sure that we bring these things to everyone's attention. The other piece that came up as a theme were Friday expectations or shifts or challenges. Staff recognizing that the need to have a 5-day instructional week, but how do we balance that? Some concerns around losing planning time and collaboration time that is typically right now on Friday. But they also appreciate having input from their leadership teams of what Fridays should look like as we transition to that piece. Collaboration and teamwork. This is some really great highlights that we've seen as there's a part called Pop-Up PD that's offered at, for example, Wyndham Primary School, and more staff have been attending than in years past. When staff have the opportunity to collaborate, they're finding it very impactful. They want us to know that at the high school, they're collaborating with colleagues to create dynamic lessons for students with that limited time they have with students face-to-face. And some staff are working to share the load of creating materials. For example, PLC teams are deciding that someone's going to do the slides for writing and another one's going to focus on the math. And so they're kind of dividing up that work that they're presenting material to in students in the hybrid model. And so that's been really helpful to share and create materials together. And then, a piece is they would love to see more time to collaborate with colleagues. The routines that they have with students makes it really difficult to sit and have lunch with a colleague and do that planning. So they're working around it, but this was one thing they wanted to have brought up. And so technology, resources, planning, we need a little refresher. We offered a ton of PD from August, and the great response was, it was great, but now that we're in this, now I didn't know what I didn't know. And so are there better tools to support planning and instruction? And this slide deck, which I'll make available online, has some direct links to remind staff that we have Google Classroom with all kinds of PD already recorded and in there that they can access at any time. And another spot, it's called Google Workspace Directions, and it's linked to our amazing infotech team at the high school. They have step-by-step videos, directions. How do I do something in Google Classroom or a Google Meet, or I want to try Flipgrid. So these tools that staff are using, many that you'll see listed below, we already have tutorials and videos that teachers can access at any time and find the right tool for them. Which leads me into over and over hybrid staff sharing. These softwares and pieces of technology have been a huge help. GarageBand, iMovie, QuickTime Player, using iTunes, YouTube, obviously Google Classroom and Google Meet. Those are up and running across the RSU. Seesaw is being used to connect families and staff in the lower grades. Reading A to Z has a digital running records piece. For if you're an early elementary teacher, that is like a pot of gold when we're trying to assess students' reading levels and where they are, especially where we can't be closer than 6 feet with them. The infotech team over and over was mentioned for providing excellent resources and support. They're digitally and they are on call and they are helping staff whenever they need it. And so we want to be planning for in-person. This is a part that came up in staff recognizing that planning for in-person and non-in-person days are more work than expected. And so some of these tools are becoming very well used. People are really thinking, how can we streamline? But it's in a constant flow, but it is much more work than anybody anticipated. And so I think it's really important for us to recognize that piece. The hybrid group also talked about connections with family and students. Number one, in person with students. After March, like I said before, it's so hard not to see those faces that we're used to seeing every day. Small group sizes, class sizes have been beneficial when working in this model, and that they are focusing on what students and families need is much appreciated. That was said over multiple times. They're trying to integrate units, themes, outdoor experiences. so to give students outside when the weather was nice. They also noticed that behavior issues are way down in the buildings, but staff, especially at the upper level, need help. And I actually wanted to put this in verbatim for this teacher because I think it's really important, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But what I really need is not more tools, but a stronger message to the community that they need to treat their virtual days as actual school days. And you'll see that coming up again. But at the upper level, it's how do we get these students to understand that they need to do some stuff when they're not in person with me. And so how do we break kind of like that trend that's going around, I think, at every school right now. And then I'm going to switch over to the 100% distance presentations. You as a board have been extremely helpful with your guidance in allowing us to actually have RSU 14 teachers teaching the distance platform. We chose not to put students on a program to work solely by themselves. We have staff that are working with medical conditions, and they're working with our students remotely. They are grateful for that opportunity, and they're excited to share with you what that world looks like. So again, you're going to see some similarities in themes. The big overarching themes are mental and physical health, collaboration and teamwork. Again, technology, resources, planning, connections with families and students, scheduling, challenges with coordination of many schedules, and then engagement with students and with families. And again, like I do with hybrid, I'm going to go through the feedback that was given to us from this group. So under the theme of mental and physical health, these pieces are supporting students' emotional needs and responding to stress when remote. It's a little bit different than in person. This team meets weekly with school counselors and social workers, and they're seeing some families in crisis, and they're really working hard to connect the families with the right individuals to support them in our community. This group are worried about the mental health of our students and having social opportunities. A great example, the middle school group did a parent night. They've done a couple parent nights. And one of the suggestions from parents and the kids were, we'd like some social opportunities. And so they have a lunch bunch. They have a cooking club on Fridays. Joyce Babbitt is running a club for kids. It's called Your Story Matters. And the kids are writing, and they're actually archiving what it's like to live in the world of COVID, and capturing memories and situations that are, it's uncanny when you think about what these kids are living and experiencing. And then another group of writers is going to be working in what's called the Write Space for students in the remote team who want to do some extra writing. They want to do some creative writing. And Adina Basileir is taking students, and she's working with them in that place, so they have an interaction with other students who have similar interests, and they're exploring their writing talents. They also noticed, and I need to remind them sometimes, that balance for them with wellness and in the remote world physical challenges. So I mentioned before that the middle school has offered multiple parent nights. They want to stay connected with them. What are your ideas? How can we keep your kids engaged? We have also put in, after hearing from this team, some concerns about their physical wellness. So we have ergonomic checks coming, and they're doing visits to make sure that our remote staff, where they're on the computer for long stretches of time, have the right screens and they have the right setup. Can they stand? We were starting to see multiple headaches, so the blue light glasses, and ways to make sure that we're keeping them ergonomically healthy. We did make a shift. The number of students that have moved to remote after this last piece increased. And so for middle school, we've made a shift for 7th and 8th graders who are in science. We will be actually accessing the high school software called Odyssey-ware, and students starting in a week or so will be accessing some courses in science through Odyssey-ware that they can do at a different time with the guidance under the 2 science teachers. We made that shift due to the number of classes and the different content levels the staff members were teaching. and teaching 6 classes a day online was really breaking our staff down physically. And the number of students that we have now added, especially to the 7th grade team, is really, it's really huge. So we'll speak more about that in a little bit. The other piece is, because we're not in a structured school day in brick and mortar, is reminding them to take a balance. It's really easy for them to check email 24/7. They want to make sure their kids are okay, their families have the information. We find it sometimes a challenge to kind of power down for a little bit. And just because we're teaching from home, helping them understand a little bit of some boundaries. So the collaboration and teamwork, this was a huge theme. Huge gratitude for the administration for their trust and leadership given to the remote teaching staff. Having a community of colleagues to connect with has been so important for them. Weekly meetings, we connect with the K-5 remote staff and the middle school staff. Those have been extremely helpful. Problem solving, we spend a lot of time on. How can we make things better? What are some great ideas? Who can share things? Again, they share resources. Each grade level on the remote team has their own grade level website full of resources, weekly updates, schedules for parents. If we think it's valuable, we light it up, we put it up there for our families. And it's been wonderful. It's actually created an incredible archive of the work that students are doing. They're also beginning to invite staff, any staff member, in fact, I'll be sending out an email tomorrow, to join in a session, to use breakout rooms. So a great example is, we've done this with a couple teachers, and I have a remote teacher who wants to do their writing celebration. They finished their narrative small moment piece, and they would love an audience for those students to have an opportunity to read their writing to someone different and to receive from feedback. And so we're going to be setting those up. And it's great because if you have 15 minutes and you're at your desk or you're working in a classroom and you have some time, you can zoom in, go to the breakout room, listen to those students read, give them feedback, and we've given them a whole audience of somebody new. And so we've done this with some science classes. I know Mrs. Burtonay jumped in and helped facilitate a science lesson, and it's been a nice connection for our students who are working remotely, as they're missing some of the people they usually see in the school building. We also wanted to bring up that there has been a great collaboration between regular ed and special education teachers. Christy Anderson's a special education teacher in Raymond. She has all the K-8 special ed remote students, and expressed, she said, the collaboration is amazing. I've gotten to know people who I didn't know before. We're problem solving to make the schedules fit and to make sure that the special education students get the time and the resources that they need to be successful in this world. And I have to say, there is absolutely no way we could do this if we weren't collaborating, and this wasn't such a great team of staff that I get the privilege of working with. So technology, resources, and planning for distance. Number one, I think was a great brainstorm of Bob Hickey was, purchasing larger monitors has been a game changer for these teachers to teach remotely. So they can use 2 screens and they can see their kids, and they can use the technology to share and annotate and teach on another one. And it's been, that's all they keep saying, it's a game changer. The Zoom paid version for our remote team has been a huge piece. They have secure breakout rooms. They're able to annotate. That's been a huge piece for them as well. Google Classroom, obviously they are experts in using that platform. Again, I mentioned Reading A to Z for our running records and for reading instruction. Our library resources, a huge thank you again to the Infotech team and the building librarians for working out a system in order for kids to check out books that they'd like and parents pick up so that the kids can stay connected to their libraries. And I mentioned the really neat work Joyce Babbitt is doing with students. The Infotech team at the high school working remotely to help students who are doing some researching or to trying to build some of those skills. Tammy Lorenzotti is turning on a dime. What is it you need? What are you trying to do? And figuring out a solution for people. So it's not easy and in a box, but people have really risen to the challenge and figuring it out to make it accessible to our remote learners. I also wanted to share that our public libraries have contacted me and they said it's been great because remote families are coming in. They're kind of making a library special and going in as a family, or they're requesting books. And it's been nice to hear that the public libraries have been welcoming the families and helping them get whatever that they need. I thought one of the amazing pieces that I heard, we did the in-service day on October 9th, and I was fortunate to be part of a whole part about telling one's story about equity, and the picture books that Joyce Babbitt had mentioned about teaching diversity and equity that you could use with students. The Wyndham Public Librarian quickly got a hold of me and said, we have 8 of the 12 books and I've ordered the other ones. So if your teachers would like to borrow them, please let us know. So it just shows what how community is trying to help us in this crazy COVID world of education right now. They also talked about the importance of having art, music, and physical education activities for their students on their websites. Each of them have on their grade level website tiles that they can click, and the teachers are uploading monthly or every 2 weeks new activities that kids can engage in. And it's kind of neat because students can go back and, you know, click on a tile from their former physical education teacher, maybe down at the primary school, and check out an activity. And so they can peruse and browse and engage in any of those pieces that they'd like to. And then they also wanted to make sure that a huge resource for them has been the use of the central office to prepare and take home materials for students. There's a big balance, obviously, with remote, is we don't want students staring at a computer 24/7. So we're also offering written materials or journals, activities, and they actually come into our office and they have a big space and they run things off and prepare them, and we get them to the schools where parents can pick them up. But they really wanted to make sure that they were very grateful being welcomed into the central office to do that work. So the connections with families and students. So the first bullet I think is really important is initially they were very worried they wouldn't be able to establish a bond with students and develop relationships, and they're pleasantly surprised. That was nerve-wracking. When we went remote last spring, one of the big pieces that came out through the curriculum committee is we know our kids. Thank goodness we know our kids. What happens if we have to do this and we don't know our students? And this team has just knocked it out of the park, understanding and connecting and making relationships with students and families. They also recognize they are being a consistent person for families, and that's been a huge positive aspect of their teaching this year. They rave about their students. That's why they're on 24/7. Is they want to make sure kids are okay and how can they help. And this bullet I thought this was really just hugely important, especially in this time, is there's a reason some students aren't showing up, and we are the village in helping to take care of families. And parents have been really supportive. Our teachers are reaching out. How can we help? If work's not being, turned in, what can we do to help? Do we need an extra session? And so it is that village mentality of they're trying to make sure that students have everything that they need. Do I need to mail something home to you? It's okay. We've connected families with Jeannie Riley and with Chef Ryan to make sure that we have food that we're able to get to these families. And so this remote team really has become another layer for helping to support our families and connect them to community resources. Some of the struggles I do recognize, family follow through is a concern for some of their kids. And again, they keep trying and trying. And one thing they express, the remote staff worry more about students in this platform, and it's really hard to shut off. And I think that is typical because they've just connected with these students. They see these kids, they know that they're right there for them, they're a constant for these students. And staff sometimes has a hard time powering down, I guess I'll say it that way at the end of the day. So scheduling and engagement for the distance crew is, when we started this, we had to, again, work with Lisa Garno and her staff. gifted and talented services. We have some students remoting in to receive those services. Teams have worked together, grade levels have worked together. Everybody has problem solved. How do we get the students their regular ed instruction, and then they design the schedule so the student can then go to a breakout room or touch base with their special education teacher to receive those services. And so it's a moving part. And I think for the remote team, their consistent schedules, their daily schedules have really helped them mirror that and stay true to those pieces. And one of the other scheduling parts was, which I mentioned before, is the middle school level, the screen time for staff teaching more than one content. The engagement, again, I mentioned before, staff feel connected and have worked out plans with families. Some families, I have a few teachers that touch base with families in the evening because it's the best time for them, just to make sure everything is going okay. Our teachers have been really flexible in that part. They've worked in small groups on Fridays. They don't assign office hours for our remote staff. They actually help students understand and families. For example, we're going to do a half-hour block of writing. It's going to be a one-on-one conference with me, and I'm going to have you from 10 to 10:30 on Friday. And so all of these mini lessons, connections are going on during Friday for our remote teaching staff. They also engage students. They're using the hand raises. They're using the chat. They're using breakout rooms. They're having kids respond on a Padlet. They're using all kinds of really cool tools to help engage their students, and they keep mixing it up so that students can have some fun to look forward to. I mentioned before, but they're adding on some layers of a cooking club, which if you ever need a place to see children smile, join in at 1 o'clock on Fridays. There's a theme of the week. Last Friday, it was a breakfast smorgasbord, and anybody who cooked, the requirement was to have a starch, a protein, and a fruit. And they run it, if you've ever seen like a kind of chopped kind of British baking show, and students start and they cook, and they cook live on Zoom, and they share their recipes and they share their finished product. And it's great to see families together. We caught some dads eating M&Ms off the Halloween cupcakes one week. But it's really fun for the students and the staff. And it's emceed by Emily Stokes and Richie Vickers. And they just have an absolute ball and talk about some of the lifelong skills that they're doing and celebrating. And so it's a nice way, and it's something that staff are trying to think outside the box of how can we engage our kids, how can we keep them, together and, do some really incredible pieces. So with some barriers we are working to address right now, one of them is called ghosting. And so if you're not familiar with that, so I'm a social studies teacher. I'm in my class, I'm teaching the lesson. Kids are not showing they don't have their video on, they have their avatar on, and class ends and you're telling the student, we're all set, you can go, and there's no one there. So they've signed into the session, but they're really not there. And so teachers are following up with private emails or phone calls with parents. And then the middle school staff did another parent evening last week where they addressed it again just to help parents understand what was going on and hopefully to help follow through and discourage that behavior. The high school level reported a barrier in this is some high school kids just not showing up. And that goes to the third bullet of staff are constantly following up with these individuals and recognizing that this takes a huge amount of time. One of the other barriers is, and thank goodness for Bob Hickey because he's working on this, is our staff, when they're calling from home, if their number is blocked because they don't want their personal number out there, families often won't pick up because it says unknown. And so Bob is working on a solution so that the phones can go through the district so it shows that it's RSU 14 calling. I don't know the magic behind that. Maybe Chris can speak to that later. But they're following up so much, email, and then obviously the calling. So these are the barriers that come up, and these are the barriers we're trying to figure out. So in all of this, this has given us valuable information for the RSU. And so I can't say enough about the staff that came in person and the staff that wrote in and really reflected on those 4 prompts to help us understand this. So we noticed that there are very similar themes in both hybrid and remote. Relationship and engagement are at the forefront. I've been here 9 years. They always have been the forefront in RSU 14. And staff are recognizing that this change, hybrid, remote, can cause some uncertainty, and that problem solving is needed. Nobody has written a book on how to do hybrid perfectly or remote perfectly, and it's constantly changing. We also know that the distance learning PD module that was built with our Infotech team this summer really helped to set the stage for the year. We heard back from many staff who said it really helped me think differently about my craft, my instruction, how to organize my Google Classroom, how to have right now, even I'm in hybrid, have a digital presence. So in case we have to go remote, I feel a little bit more prepared. Staff also wanted us to know their gratitude for building administrators and central office. And I can't tell you, every email I received with, Christine, here's my feedback. It, you know, started with, first of all, I have to thank my principal. These guys are really thinking outside the box. I'm feeling supportive. I can go to them with anything. And I think that was a huge piece. The other part was, and at the end of every email was, Christine, thank you. Staff are extremely appreciative of having provided an opportunity to share what they're living this fall, either remotely or with hybrid. And so they truly felt blessed that they had the opportunity to share feedback. So at the forefront right now, after all this information, is the ergonomic checks for distance staff. If we're physically having issues, we gotta attend to those just as we would if we were in the school setting. We are providing support for cross-curricular planning. Our middle school team is getting together to do some different planning so that they can do some different types of teaching, project-based learning, getting those skills in, but also giving kids an opportunity to work through different themes. Professional development for just right tools, which I mentioned before. Now that I'm in this, what's the right tool for it? Is there a better one? Is there one that's more streamlined? And time to engage students on Friday we're working on. And then how do we continue to provide special ed services in both models? You heard extensively from Lisa and her team today on what that has been like and the number of students that we're servicing. And again, at the forefront, our science instruction will transition to OdysseyWare, and we will revisit that in a little bit to see how that's going with students. 2 staff members that were the science teachers for 7th and 8th grade will also be serving as liaisons. And so it's not ideal, and we will be the first to say that, but at least our students have all their other subjects with our teacher, and they are face-to-face through remote learning with providing support for our science piece. And then again, like I mentioned, Bob Hickey, huge shout out to him, is working on a solution to use school phone numbers when calling our parents. And so now I would love to answer any questions, or if you have questions for me you want me to find out and report back, I would love to do that. Oh, Janie, I think you're muted.
Christina.
Thank you. I just was curious as to how many students were impacted by the change to OdysseyWare.
So right now in 7th and 8th grade, I believe the total is 71 students. So the numbers, when we had the opportunity for students to come in and to come out, the 7th grade numbers really grew. Ryan and Karen at the high schools having the same issue. For example, his is in social studies. High school students now that want to go remote, there are no social studies teachers left to teach that piece. And so in the interim, they're going to go to OdysseyWare, and we will continue to support students in that way.
Thank you.
Yep.
I want to say, as somebody who is witnessing all of this, I wrote down all the different times they said, we couldn't have done this without Christine. Christine, thank you for your support. Thank you for the administrative support, especially Christine. So we throw around all our thanks, but we're really sincere that I don't think it could have happened without all of you, all of the admin working together. So that's all the Christines and all the Chris's. So thank you.
Janie, if I could just speak for a second, just I know in the curriculum committee and having a chance to hear from both people who are working hybrid and people who are working in the fully remote. And I know Christine has worked very, very closely with those who are in full remote and has had a chance to oversee. We now have a little over 450 students who have chosen full remote in our district. But also, just one thing just to point out, and I think Christine captured on that last slide, is that many of the issues that Christine brought up, they are very, very common across our hybrid teachers and also our remote teachers. And teaching and planning in an environment that is a different instructional model where you don't get to see your kids every day or don't get to see your kids live or in a different format is a whole different way of teaching. And so just want to thank also all the people who provided the written feedback and then the in-person feedback. And we're truly honest that this is difficult and this is difficult work to do. And I think we just need to continue to do all we can as a district to support all these individuals who are working to make things as normal as possible for our students. And just also, Christine, I just want to talk a little bit about OdysseyWare, which Christine, I think, started this. Many districts around us for kids that are remote are 100% software based, especially more so at the middle level and the high school level. And I wish that we could offer a full catalog of courses at both the middle level and the high school level based upon what the need is. Unfortunately, with that many students moving remote, we are having to use some supplemental programs to make sure that we can give kids a wide variety. Wyndham High School did that for years through Virtual High School and through OdysseyWare. OdysseyWare just provides another option for us so that we can continue to, again, offer as robust a program. One issue that we may need to think of is that if remote numbers continue to grow, it may require some staff shuffling to make sure that we are having manageable numbers and meeting the needs of kids. And so this is definitely a work in progress, and just want to thank Christine, and Lisa, and also Becca for leadership within the teaching group and trying to help us navigate and get feedback. So we're continuing to make adjustments as we go along.
Thank you. Okay, I guess we'll say thank you very much, Christine, for doing this presentation tonight. The curriculum committee will be moving on to a regular schedule of looking at the different curricula in the in our district starting in January. Christine, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, again, just thank you for the board for your support. Jenny, Kate, and Janie attended all the live meetings. They were able to see the emotion. They were able to see the comments, the dialogue. I think it's really important that our staff have a voice and that they're heard. And I am the first to say that none of these models are perfect. And we're in a global pandemic, but I just think that we are trying and revamping and problem solving constantly and dealing with whatever comes our way to make it better for students. And it's just what it is right now. And we're going to continue to do that. We are committed to do that and to make sure that we're providing the very best that we can for our kiddos. So.
Thanks. All right, we'll move on to cost sharing agreement. Mr. Howell?
Sure, and I feel like the person that says we're doing all this great educational stuff, but now we need to go ahead and pay the bills, which is what the purpose of the cost sharing formula is all about. So I don't have a presentation for you tonight. What I want to talk about is to give you a process to talk about our cost sharing agreement. And especially now that we are past withdrawal and past that movement, it was an item on our list of things that we'd be taking a look at as an RSU. And now that we know that we get to keep Raymond within the RSU, it makes absolute perfect sense now to move forward with looking at our withdrawal, cost sharing formula, not the withdrawal agreement. I'm not going to look at that for quite a while. But within the cost sharing formula, and for those who are maybe new to the board or those who in the public don't know what it is, the state sets a minimum amount that we need to pay for public education. And that minimum amount is set through a formula called the Essential Programs and Services Formula. And it delineates how much money that Wyndham at a minimum and how much money for Raymond at a minimum that it should be contributing towards the cost of education. That formula is a minimal amount. And at one time, the EPS formula was based upon actual school districts. Over time, what the EPS formula is actually turned into is how much money does the state have to spend? And then they back into the formula to say, well, here's how much districts should be spending based upon their worth, and here's how much we can actually give them through direct state subsidy. So there's always an amount that is over EPS, and that amount is calculated and then given to each town that makes up our RSU through what's called an amount over EPS, and it's our cost sharing formula uses that. When we became a district in 2009, Don Davis at the time took all the amount that our Wyndham was spending over EPS and took the amount that Raymond was spending over EPS. He put those formulas together, and it roughly at the time, if you took the combination and looked at the percentages, Wyndham was 55% and Raymond was 45%. Over time, through cost savings and other things, and even a reduced enrollment in Raymond, that number has begun to drop. Back in 2015, and we have some board members who were here in 2015, the board did a year-long study on the cost-sharing formula and shifted from that 55-45 to an amount that was based upon percentage of the town on valuation of the town. And so over time, that formula now is roughly Wyndham paying 65% over EPS and Raymond paying 35% over EPS. And that it's a fair formula. It's a formula that really captures accurate costs and really gives us a good basis for predictability within budget and also predictability when we're assessing the two towns. But it's due, and the recommendation is that every 5 years that the board takes some time to review that formula. Finance met, I think it was roughly 2 weeks ago. Pete, does that sound about right? 1st of November. Finance had a chance to meet, and I asked Finance Committee at that time and hoped that they would take on the process of reviewing the cost sharing formula to make sure that it's still a fair formula, that it's an accurate formula. In addition, to make sure that that committee had a chance to get some input from stakeholders, and that would include some town leadership from Wyndham and some town leadership from Raymond. Thankfully, one positive thing I think that came out of withdrawal is that there was some significant work done on Raymond budget and what it actually costs to educate students in Raymond. We already knew kind of the Wyndham side of the house, and I think again that kind of showed that we have a fair formula, but again we need to go through the process and make sure that we're giving it its due diligence. The second part of the cost sharing formula addresses major capital construction. And I know we've talked about this as a board multiple times, but basically this is that if the district builds a school, then it's decided through the cost sharing formula that the town in which the school is built and the town in which the students access the building, that they are ultimately responsible for any additional costs that are not covered by the state. That's within our formula. With construction coming up, I think it's worth to take a look and review that. There may not be any changes. And it may ultimately be the committee's recommendation of the board to not make any changes, or the committee may recommend, you know what, we may want to take a look at changing some components of the formula. Through statute, we have 3 choices for structuring this formula. One is pupil count. One is using valuation of the 2 communities, or the third one, which is a combination of the 2. So this is a process that will be taking place probably between now and March. And then we'll have a chance to do some research, have a chance to get some feedback, a chance to review our numbers, And then the finance committee will then have the opportunity to make a recommendation to the full board to either make a change, which then would require voter approval, or to keep the same formula and to say, you know what, this is a fair formula and we should continue using it in the RSU. So I have all the folders from the work that was done in 2015, and we'll have a chance to review that with finance, and it should be a project that we're thoughtful about and that we spend a little bit of time, and it will be of great interest to both communities as we work through this formula. So it would be my recommendation that finance be the group that works through this and then makes a final recommendation to the full board.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing from them. And we have representation in finance from both Wyndham and Raymond people. So, okay, it is now time, very important time, for the superintendent's report. Mr. Howell.
Jenny, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Cost sharing was one component that I did want to hit upon. The other thing that I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to do, because now in RSU 14, we've had a couple of COVID cases that we've had to work through as a district. And I just want to take a couple of minutes and share a little bit behind the scenes for what's happening. And also just to clarify for anyone who may watch the rerun of this on Channel 7, just a little bit of, again, what's happening behind the scenes. And I think most importantly, why does it seem like sometimes that the RSU is not sending out information and that they may have information that's already seen on Facebook or other places. So when we receive communication that there is a positive case in RSU 14, we actually have to verify that through the Maine Department of Education and the Maine CDC. So yes, we'll get a test result, but we also need to make sure that that test result has been recorded in the CDC database. And sometimes it can take a little bit of time to receive that contact back. In addition to that, through that process, we are assigned a contact tracer. And that contact tracer, working with our nursing staff, then helps us determine who needs to quarantine, who does not need to quarantine, and also will let us know whether or not the student or adult, if they may be showing symptoms, whether or not they were actually in RSU 14 for any of their symptomatic periods. So it can take a little bit of time to go through that. Once that is all confirmed and once we have our quarantine list, we make personal phone calls and contact with staff and students who are directly impacted by whatever case that's taking place. So a great example, our first case, which happened the end of October, that was over 70 phone calls that needed to be made to let families know, because the last thing we want is for a family to find out via an email or a listserv message that their student might have been possibly in contact with a student or staff member with COVID. We then work to connect with the building. We also work to connect with the community, and at the whole time trying to keep the board as informed as possible. I know it's frustrating for the community because they may already hear from friends and family members, I get a call, I've been quarantined, or messaging starts to then ripple or really fly through the community. We can't start sharing things until we have that opportunity to have notified everyone on the list. The other thing I just also wanted to share with the community, we cannot share particulars about students and staff members. They are protected under HIPAA. They have rights that, and to the best of our knowledge, we are not, or our ability, we are not releasing information. We're trying to give as much as we can to order to make sure that people feel like they're informed, but we are walking a very fine line when we actually go ahead when we are working through these processes. So again, it's a little bit of a slow process, but it's something that we're working on, and we want to make sure that we're keeping families safe and we're keeping the family informed. Lastly, I'll transition to, at this point, Maine CDC has worked with the Maine Principals Association, and they are working at this point to have some form of winter athletics. What's difficult at this time is that for the sports of swimming and for indoor track. RSU 14 does not have a facility at this point that will take us for either one of those sports. Also for hockey, and there's still some question of whether or not hockey would even possibly happen. We do not have a facility for that as well. Wrestling is close contact. We would have individual team things, but does not look like we're going to have wrestling that's happening between students. I've not had a chance to read the skiing guidelines that came out for recreational skiing, and I think there were some updated guidelines for skiing for high school students. That looks like it might be a possibility. And then basketball as well. Something that's a little different from fall sports to winter sports. The Maine CDC and also the MPA left spectators based upon capacity to individual school districts and leagues to determine. It's been very, very clear that at this point, there will be no spectators for any event going on into the future for winter athletics. Right now, things are due to start on December, I believe December 9th, that second week of December. That will all be dependent upon where we go as a state with caseloads, whether or not those things happen. If we are transferred, remember, we're still green right now. If for some reason that Cumberland County is designated as yellow, we would then, all athletics would stop. And that's been clarified as well.
Thank you. Any questions about that? Okay. Now time for election of school board chair. Nominations are now in order for the office of chair until December 2021.
I would like to nominate Janie Cummings for school board chair.
I second that.
Thank you. Are there any further nominations? Okay. Someone else has to move to close. If not, the motion to close nominations is.
I move to close nominations.
Okay, it's been moved by Jenny. Oh, moved by Scott, seconded by Jenny. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Christina Small,
Yes.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Yes.
Kate Briggs,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Scott McLean.
Yay.
Okay, I'm supposed to say I move to appoint me as chair until December 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Scott and Kate. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Christina Small,
Yes.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Yes.
Kate Briggs,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Scott McLean.
Yay.
Okay, we'll now have the election of the school board vice chair. Nominations are now in order for the office of vice chair until December 2021.
Miss Chairperson, I nominate Kate Briggs for Vice Chair.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any further nominations? If not, the motion to close nomination is in order.
I move to close nominations.
It's been moved by Kate Levier, seconded by Pete Hensler. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Christina Small,
Yes.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Kate Briggs,
Aye.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Scott McLean.
Yay.
Okay, I move to appoint Kate Bricks as vice chair until December 2021.
Second. Oh, do I have to say that?
Yeah, that's good. It's because I moved her. It's been moved by Jenny Cummings, seconded by Marge Gavoni. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
Christina Small,
Yes.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Scott McLean.
Yay.
Okay, I'll now have a motion to go into executive session.
I move to enter into executive session to discuss RSU 14 contract negotiations with the RSU 14 Board of Directors pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 405(6)D and not return to regular meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Pete, seconded by Marge. All those in favor?
Christina Small,
Yes.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Yes.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Sorry, yes, did you not hear me? Sorry.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Scott McLean.
Yay.
Okay, I'll meet you on the flip-flop.